He was the most controlled man in comedy. Johnny Carson could raise an eyebrow and stop a nation, could tilt his chin and decide whether a career would live or die. But there was one man who could completely dismantle his composure. The bulldog in a cheap suit, the prince of the punchline, Rodney Dangerfield. Before his death, Carson made it clear, sometimes in words, more often through helpless laughter, why he loved Rodney, because Rodney did the one thing almost no one else could. He made Johnny Carson forget to be Johnny Carson, the man who made the king lose control. To understand the Bond, rewind to the late 1960s. Rodney Dangerfield was no newcomer. He'd already quit show business once, sold aluminum siding, and started over. Then, with a battered suitcase of one-liners about a man who got no respect, he reinvented himself. He was 40-something, sweating, desperate, and brilliant. When Rodney walked through the curtain on The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson, he brought a 6-minute hurricane. Joke, breath, collapse. Repeat.
You know, I come from a big old-fashioned, hard-working, stupid family. That's what I come from. I tell you, when I was a kid, nobody liked my family, you know. They always wanted to get rid of us. I remember one time my family went on a picnic in the woods. The animals started a forest fire.
Carson would try to hold steady, but within seconds, he'd be gasping for air, doubled over his desk. You can watch it happen in any clip from the 70s or 80s. The rhythm builds, the audience howls, and Carson breaks. That wasn't planned. It was surrender. Carson was a magician by trade, a craftsman obsessed with timing. He respected precision above all else. Rodney's timing wasn't just good, it was metronomic perfection. Each joke landed like a drummer hitting the snare on cue. Johnny saw the math behind it and marveled at it. When he waved Rodney over to the couch after a set, that silent act of anointment every comic dreamed of, it wasn't just courtesy. It was Carson saying, "This man is untouchable." The Private Johnny. Johnny Carson rarely revealed affection. He was famously private, a fortress of charm and distance. His praise was quiet, his approval priceless. So, when Rodney appeared and Johnny couldn't stop laughing, people noticed. The staff noticed. The country noticed. Ed McMahon once said, "There were nights Johnny didn't even try to keep it together. Rodney came on, and we just let him go." And that's exactly what happened. Carson's team could feel it from backstage. When the cue card said, "Rodney," the tension in the building disappeared. Everyone knew the show would work. The monologue could stumble, a guest could flop. But once Rodney tugged that tie and launched his barrage, The Tonight Show became bulletproof. Johnny didn't need to say, "I love this guy." He showed it every time he collapsed in laughter, every time he stretched the segment, every time he told the producers, "Let's keep rolling." Flashback, a 1974 night of mayhem. Picture it, 1974. Rodney strides through the curtain to the brassy blast of Doc Severinson's band. The crowd is already laughing before he opens his mouth. He starts. "When I was a kid, I asked my dad for $1. He said, 'What for?' 'You're only 6. I said, 'I want to start saving up for college.' He said, 'That's my boy. Here's $5. Go to college now.'" The audience howls. He barely breathes. "My wife and I were happy for 20 years. Then we met." He tugs his tie, rolls his eyes, wipes the sweat. Behind the desk, Johnny tries to keep a straight face, then loses it completely, hand to mouth, rocking with laughter. It's pure chemistry, the comic and the host, locked in rhythm, one throwing, the other catching and collapsing. That night, Carson broke 4 times in 6 minutes. By the 5th, he didn't even try to recover. A shared need. Rodney needed Carson's stage. It wasn't just exposure, it was legitimacy. The Tonight Show was the cathedral of comedy. One good set, and you could fill clubs for a year. Carson, meanwhile, needed Rodney's certainty. When the night was flat, when the energy was low, Rodney was a guarantee. He could fix a room in 6 minutes.
And smoking, that's another one. Try to stop smoking, that's a beauty, huh? Well, with cigarettes, my wife and I, we made a deal, my wife and I. We only smoke after sex. I got the same pack now since 1975. What bothers me is my wife. She's up to 3 packs a day.
For a host who lived in fear of dead air, that was salvation. Their relationship wasn't personal in the gossip column sense. They weren't golf buddies or vacation companions. It was deeper than that, mutual artistic trust. Carson knew Rodney would deliver, and Rodney knew Johnny would let him. That's why Rodney never feared the camera. He wasn't performing for Carson, he was performing with him. The late-era visits. By the mid-1980s, Rodney was a movie star, Caddyshack, Back to School. His face was on T-shirts, yet he kept coming back to Carson's couch, not out of need, but loyalty. One late 80s appearance broke the routine. No stand-up, no monologue, just Rodney sitting beside Johnny, riffing freely. Johnny fed him softballs. "How's the wife, Rodney?" Rodney shot back, "I told her the truth. I told her I was seeing a psychiatrist. Then she told me the truth. She's seeing a psychiatrist, 2 plumbers, and a bartender." Carson threw his head back, tears in his eyes. It wasn't an act, it was communion. The quiet farewells. Then came the quiet fade-out years. Rodney's health began to slip in the early 2000s. Heart surgery, lingering complications. Even then, he couldn't help joking about it. "I told the doctor I broke my leg in 2 places," he'd say. "He told me to stop going to those places." He passed in October 2004 at 82. The world lost a one-liner machine who made suffering look funny. Just 3 months later, Johnny Carson followed. He died in January 2005 at 79, after a decade of near silence. In his final years, Carson had stopped appearing publicly, but he still sent jokes to late-night hosts under pseudonyms. Even in retirement, he was shaping the laughter of others. When tributes poured in, the pattern was unmistakable. Every comic, from Jerry Seinfeld to Joan Rivers, said the same thing. Johnny gave them their shot. But the name that kept resurfacing, the one always delivered with a smile, was Rodney's. Because Carson didn't just give Rodney a break, he gave him a home. The reason why. So what was it exactly that made Carson love Rodney Dangerfield? It wasn't friendship in the usual sense. It wasn't pity or nostalgia. It was recognition. Carson saw in Rodney the same engine that drove himself, the obsession with rhythm, with polish, with the invisible timing that separates the merely funny from the immortal. Rodney was exactly what Carson valued most, a professional killer who made the impossible look effortless. And on nights when the world was heavy and Johnny's smile was just a mask for the grind of show business, Rodney walked out and gave him something he rarely experienced: joy without control. Carson's laughter with Rodney was different. It wasn't polite or performative or cued for the crowd. It was a man forgetting his crown for 6 minutes and just laughing. That was Johnny's love language, not compliments, not interviews, but pure, uncontrollable laughter. The legacy left behind. Their chemistry rewrote the DNA of late-night television. Before Carson, talk shows were stiff interviews. After Carson, and after Rodney, they became playgrounds. The host wasn't just a moderator, he was an accomplice, a musical partner in rhythm and reaction. Future hosts would chase that energy, Letterman with Chris Rock, Fallon with Martin Short, but none would quite duplicate it. Because the bond between Carson and Dangerfield was born from decades of pain and polish, failure and redemption. Carson admired the grind that made Rodney who he was, and Rodney, in turn, respected the man who let him be himself on the biggest stage in the world. It's poetic, in a way. Rodney built his entire act around not being respected, yet the one man whose respect mattered most gave it freely, again and again, every time he laughed himself to tears on national television. The final laugh. Imagine it, Malibu, early 2000s. Johnny Carson sits in his quiet home, retired, remote in hand. He cues up an old clip, Rodney striding onto the stage, tie yanked, face already red. The band kicks in. Rodney begins, "I tell you, my psychiatrist told me I'm crazy. I said I want a second opinion. He said, okay, you're ugly too." The crowd explodes. Johnny, sitting alone, laughs. A real laugh, the kind that comes from somewhere below the armor. That, more than any interview or tribute, is the answer. That's what Johnny left behind before he died. The simple truth that laughter, at its purest, is love. Rodney Dangerfield made Johnny Carson laugh like a boy again. And in those moments, America didn't see a legend at a desk. It saw a man reminded why he started telling jokes in the first place. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and comment down below, as it helps support this channel. Also, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell to get notified of our newest videos. Thanks for watching.